All right, today we're cracking open a cold case file, and I mean a really cold one. It's one of the oldest and largest in history. The crime scene? The entire planet. The trail has been cold for tens of thousands of years. We are investigating the very first great extinction event caused by our species. So let's follow the evidence, track down our suspect, and piece together what really happened. First things first in any investigation, let's meet the victims. You see, the world our ancestors walked into was a land of absolute giants. We're talking about creatures like these. Giant ground sloths that could stand 6 meters tall, and massive armadillos that weighed up to 2 tons. This was just the Americas, one of many continents that were just teeming with these enormous, incredible animals that had been evolving on their own for millions of years. And then, poof, they were gone. This is the central mystery of our case. In what amounts to a geological blink of an eye, these magnificent creatures and hundreds of other species like them across the entire globe just disappeared, wiped out. So the question for us, as the detectives on this case, is pretty simple. What or who was responsible? Our investigation kicks off at the first major crime scene, Australia, roughly 45,000 years ago. When the first humans showed up, they basically stumbled into a world that was about to be changed forever. Ancient Australia was something else, a world of lost giants. This bizarre menagerie totally ruled by marsupials. I want you to just try and picture it. Kangaroos standing 2 meters tall, marsupial lions as big as modern tigers, and the giant Diprotodon, a wombat that weighed 2.5 tons. For millions of years, these guys reigned supreme. The scale of what happened here was, well, it was staggering. This wasn't some slow, gradual decline. It was a bloodbath. Within just a few thousand years, 23 out of the 24 groups of large animals were completely wiped off the map. Food chains just collapsed. The entire ecosystem was turned upside down. So, who's our culprit? Now, in any extinction investigation, the first suspect you always bring in for questioning is climate change. It's the usual scapegoat, right? But like any good detective knows, you have to check the alibi. And in this case, the climate story, well, it's got some pretty big holes in it. So let's break down this alibi. Yeah, the climate shifted 45,000 years ago, but it wasn't anything crazy. The Diprotodon had already survived at least 10 previous ice ages, and some of those were way worse. So why did it die out this time? And here's the real kicker. Life in the ocean, which should have been hit really hard by climate change, was largely spared. It just seems way too convenient that our ancestors happened to arrive at the exact moment all these giants were just dropping dead. The timing is just too perfect to be a coincidence. With the climate's alibi looking pretty shaky, our investigation now turns to a new person of interest on the scene, a highly intelligent, super adaptable predator that was, for the very first time, breaking out of its home turf in Afro-Asia. Our prime suspect? Homo sapiens. Just look at this timeline. It shows an absolutely astonishingly rapid expansion, a true testament to the incredible ingenuity of our species. We crossed open oceans to get to Australia, we learned to survive the Arctic to get to America, and then, in just a couple thousand years, we spread all the way from Alaska to the southernmost tip of the continent. No other animal in history had ever moved into so many different places so quickly. Okay, so we've placed our suspect at multiple crime scenes, but we still need to figure out the means. How on earth could small bands of foragers with only Stone Age tech cause an ecological disaster on a continental scale? What were their weapons? It turns out their MO was devastatingly effective, and it had 3 key parts. First, they exploited the animal's slow breeding. For these big creatures, killing just one every few months meant deaths were happening faster than births, a guaranteed death sentence for the species. Second, the element of surprise. The megafauna in Australia and America had never seen a human before. This frail-looking ape didn't seem like a threat, so they didn't run. And third, fire. Our ancestors burned down huge forests on purpose to create grasslands, basically re-engineering the entire ecosystem to make hunting easier. And now for the forensic evidence, the smoking gun of our case. Scientists have been combing through the Americas, analyzing fossilized bones and even petrified dung balls, also known as coprolites. And what they find time and time again is that when they date the most recent samples, the timeline just ends, abruptly, precisely when humans first flooded the continent. It's the prehistoric equivalent of finding the suspect's fingerprints all over the crime scene. You know, An isolated incident in Australia? Maybe you could write that off as a coincidence. But when the same exact pattern repeats itself again and again all across the globe, well, a coincidence becomes a clear modus operandi. The evidence suggests we weren't just looking at a single crime, but the work of an ecological serial killer. Just take a look at the rap sheet. The pattern is absolutely undeniable. Crime scene? Australia. Suspect arrives about 45,000 years ago. The result? 23 of 24 large animal groups gone. North America, 34 out of 47, gone. South America, an incredible 50 out of 60, gone. Even as recently as 800 years ago in New Zealand, the arrival of the Maori led to the extinction of 60% of all bird species. The MO is consistent. Wherever Sapiens showed up, the megafauna disappeared. When you lay out all the evidence from all these crime scenes spanning tens of thousands of years, the conclusion is, well, it's pretty chilling. According to the source material, it's irrefutable. The historical record makes Homo sapiens look like an ecological serial killer. Now, you might be thinking this is just a morbid history lesson, right? An old case file we can stamp solved and just put away. But the findings from this investigation, they're directly relevant to a case that is still very, very active today. Let's look at the numbers. Around 70,000 years ago, right around the dawn of the cognitive revolution, our planet was home to roughly 200 different groups of large land mammals. And by the time we get to the agricultural revolution, just 12,000 years ago, only about 100 of those groups were left. Just let that sink in for a second. We hold the dubious honor of driving half of the world's big beasts to extinction long before we even invented writing or iron tools or the wheel. This wasn't the fault of industrial society. This was our foraging ancestors. Our investigation reveals that the biodiversity crisis we're facing today, it isn't a new thing at all. It's simply the third wave. The first wave of extinction was unleashed by the foragers. The second wave came with the farmers. And the third, the one driven by industrial activity, is the one we are living through right now. So this cold case might be closed, but the story of our species' impact on this planet is far from over. Our ancestors wrote the first 2 chapters. The verdict on that first wave of extinction is in. The real question is, knowing all this, how are we going to choose to write the final chapter of the third?